41 times in 15 years, the system detected a nuclear explosion, and 41 times it was right. 0 mistakes, 100% accuracy. On the 42nd time, the United States government decided the system was wrong. Not because the data was bad, not because the sensor malfunctioned, not because there was a viable alternative explanation, but because the truth would trigger a chain reaction of consequences the White House simply couldn't afford. This is the story of how a nuclear explosion happened and officially didn't happen simultaneously for 45 years. September 22, 1979, 3 a.m. Washington time, the NSA Command Center. An alert. Not loud, not theatrical, just a red indicator on a screen, a short message. The duty officer looked at the screen, read it, called his boss. The boss called his. The chain of phone calls reached the White House in 40 minutes.
The message was brief. The Vela 6911 satellite, in orbit over the Indian Ocean between the coast of South Africa and the Prince Edward Islands, had detected a double flash. The first flash, incredibly bright, almost instantaneous. A pause of a few milliseconds. The second flash, less intense, expanding, fading out much slower. The people who received this signal knew exactly what it meant. They had worked with this data for years. This specific sequence, an ultra-bright flash, a pause, a growing secondary flash, is the physical fingerprint of one specific event. Not a meteor, not a lightning storm, not a glitch. A nuclear explosion. Why were they so sure? Because the physics of a nuclear detonation creates a signature you literally cannot confuse with anything else.
The shock wave outpaces the fireball. The compressed air flashes first, a brief, blinding burst. Then the shock wave becomes transparent, revealing the fireball itself behind it, slower, dimmer, lasting longer. 2 peaks of light, one fast, one slow. The gap? Milliseconds. No natural phenomenon replicates this pattern. None. In 15 years, not a single false alarm. The Vela satellites were built specifically for this, to detect violations of the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Since 1963, when the major powers agreed to stop atmospheric testing, someone had to keep watch. Vela kept watch. 41 times it detected a blast. 41 times it was confirmed by seismology, radiochemistry, and airborne sampling. 100% accuracy. The signal on September 22nd was number 42.
By morning, Carter's advisors knew someone had tested a nuclear weapon in the Indian Ocean. The question wasn't if it happened. The sensors were unequivocal. The question was, what do we do about it? The next morning, silence. Not a single government made a statement. The Soviet Union was quiet. France was quiet. China, India, Pakistan, radio silence. The location of the blast was the open ocean between Africa and Antarctica, one of the least visited places on Earth, hundreds of miles from the nearest shipping lane. Perfect anonymity. Washington started making a list. The USSR crossed off quickly. No motive, no activity in the region. France? They tested in the Pacific, out in the open. China, India, ruled out for the same reasons. That left 2. Israel and South Africa.
Why them? By 79, Israel was a country that de facto possessed nuclear weapons, but had never admitted it. The policy of nuclear ambiguity, neither confirm nor deny. A strategic choice to avoid the pressure that inevitably follows an admission. But ambiguity only works if there's no proof. A public test is proof. So if a test was necessary, it had to be secret, maximum secrecy. South Africa, a state under mounting pressure, apartheid, sanctions, isolation, the threat of a total boycott. Their own bomb was the ultimate insurance policy, an argument that stops any foreign intervention dead in its tracks. 2 countries, similar logic, both under pressure, both needed a nuke as an insurance policy. Both isolated enough to make collaboration look highly attractive. Intel gathered in the following weeks pointed to one thing: a covert nuclear partnership existed between them, undocumented, but corroborated by several independent sources.
The Prince Edward Islands, a tiny archipelago in the sub-Antarctic Ocean. Permanent population, 0. Year-round storms, natural camouflage. Any fallout would scatter in days. From the perspective of a clandestine test, it was the perfect spot. Almost. Because right above it hung the Vela satellite. The Carter administration found itself in an institutional trap. On one side, the data. 100% accuracy over 15 years. The physics were absolute. A sensor has no political bias. On the other side, the fallout. To acknowledge the blast meant admitting that their closest ally, Israel, had secretly conducted a nuclear test. And that automatically triggered legal mechanisms, mandatory sanctions against a violator of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Sanctions against Israel.
In the middle of an oil shock, in the middle of Middle East peace talks, right after the Camp David Accords, which had taken colossal effort to secure. To acknowledge the explosion meant tearing down the very architecture they had just built. Here's the formula. The cost of the truth exceeded the cost of the lie. And when that happens, the system finds a solution, the standard solution. Form a panel. Not just any panel, a hand-picked one. A group of scientists who, for various reasons, were motivated enough to reach the right conclusion, or lacked the independence to push an inconvenient one. The unofficial mandate: find a technical excuse to write off the signal as a false alarm. And they did. The explanation: the sensor had been operating for over a decade. It could have degraded. It could be producing artifacts. Theoretically, a micrometeoroid strike on the satellite. A glare, not an explosion.
Technically, not a flat-out lie. Theoretically, not entirely impossible. Practically, the probability was virtually 0. The signal's characteristics didn't match any known degradation pattern. The algorithm passed all internal self-checks. In 15 years, not a single false alarm. But the panel wrote what it wrote. Washington accepted it. The official verdict: inconclusive. Likely a technical artifact. Explosion unconfirmed. Case closed. In President Carter's diary, there's an entry on September 22nd, mention of a flash in the Indian Ocean, instructions to look into it. Subsequent entries reveal the process, how he was gradually convinced that the event was inconclusive, that it required no response. The president, who started the day with a direct question, had by the end of the week become complicit in an answer that buried it.
Carter genuinely cared about non-proliferation. The SALT II talks were happening right then. He was offered a choice: principle or practical politics. He chose politics. That doesn't make him a villain. It makes him a president, caught in a trap with no good way out. But nature doesn't read official reports. Here's what happened next. Not in Washington, in the physical world. The US Navy's underwater hydroacoustic network, the SOSIS system, built to track Soviet subs, picked up an acoustic signature in the Indian Ocean. The profile? An explosion near the surface of the water. The signal traveled thousands of miles and was recorded by hydrophones near Ascension Island. Ionospheric observations detected disturbances characteristic of a nuclear blast.
Atmospheric sampling. And this is where the story gains a whole new dimension. Standard protocol demanded the immediate deployment of aircraft equipped with Geiger counters and radiation particulate filters. That didn't happen. The planes were delayed for almost a week. A week! A radioactive cloud scatters in days. By the time they took off, the concentrations were below detection thresholds. A bureaucratic delay? Maybe. Or a conscious decision not to collect evidence that would make the artifact theory impossible? We don't know. But we know the result. The atmospheric samples that could have settled this once and for all do not exist, because they weren't collected in time. And that seemed to be it. No satellite, declared unreliable. No samples, collected too late. Hydroacoustics in the ionosphere, circumstantial. Case closed.
But there was a witness no one accounted for. Early October 1979, South Australia. Typical spring rains. Sheep are grazing, farmers are working. Nothing out of the ordinary. A few weeks later, routine veterinary monitoring. Australian labs take standard samples. An anomaly. In the thyroid glands of sheep from the southern regions, iodine-131, a radioactive isotope. Half-life, 8 days. There are exactly 2 sources of iodine-131 in nature: a nuclear reactor meltdown or an atmospheric nuclear explosion. There were no nuclear reactors in South Australia. Biology works like this. Radioactive iodine falls with the rain. The grass absorbs it. The sheep eat the grass. The thyroid gland absorbs iodine. That's its normal function. The isotope accumulates. The sheep is a living trap for radioactive fallout. A biological detector you can't turn off. You can't classify it, you can't write it off as a technical artifact.
The geographic spread of the cases pointed to a source in the southern Indian Ocean, in that exact region, in that exact time frame. The sheep became the star witnesses for the prosecution. You can discredit a satellite. You can delay a fleet of planes. You can call hydroacoustics ambiguous. But sheep just ate grass after the rain. And the radioactive isotope in their thyroids didn't know its existence was politically inconvenient. The file stayed closed for 37 years. Researcher Leonard Weiss publishes an analysis of declassified documents. Weiss worked in non-proliferation. He had access to materials that had been locked away for decades. His conclusion is definitive. The sensor was fine. The signal was real. The double flash perfectly matched every characteristic of a low to medium yield nuclear explosion. The totality of the evidence, the bang meters, the hydroacoustics, the iodine-131 in the Australian sheep's thyroids, eliminates any reasonable doubt.
An official admission never came. Israel maintains its nuclear ambiguity to this day. Confirm nothing, deny nothing. South Africa admitted in '91. Yes, they developed weapons during apartheid. Yes, they dismantled their arsenal, the only country in history to voluntarily give up nuclear weapons. But the admission didn't include operational details. The documents are still heavily redacted, locked in the archives of multiple nations. The Prince Edward Islands remain uninhabited. The storms still scatter anything that might leave a trace. This is what this story is really about. The Vela program was built so no one could test a nuke in secret. The program detected a secret nuke. And the very same system that built the program decided that this one specific time the results were inconclusive. It wasn't a failure of technology. The tech worked flawlessly. The failure, if you can even call it that, was something else entirely. It's the fact that sensors exist in a political context, and the precision of an instrument doesn't protect its findings from being overwritten by the people in power. This isn't a story about one bad president. Carter wasn't a villain. It's a blueprint of how institutional lies work at the state level. It's not malice, it's not corruption. It's an incentive structure where the truth carries an impossibly high price, and where enough people at high enough levels are mutually invested in keeping that truth an inconvenient theory rather than an official fact. And here is what makes this story so relevant 45 years later. Today's world relies entirely on monitoring systems: nuclear, climate, biological, economic. Sensors detect, algorithms analyze, the data lands on the desks of the decision makers. The Vela incident is a precedent, a documented case where the data was right, the system was accurate, and a political decision simply overruled physical reality. Not in a dictatorship, in a democracy, with checks and balances, a free press, congressional oversight.
It worked because between the censor and the public, there is an interpreter, a person or a panel that translates data into a conclusion. And if the interpreter is motivated in a certain way, data can be reinterpreted. The satellite said explosion. The panel said inconclusive. The sheep said explosion. The government said case closed. Nature won, but it took 37 years, and it only won in the realm of historical journals, not in the realm of official admission. So now the question. If a monitoring system built expressly to detect covert nuclear tests detected a covert nuclear test and was neutralized by a political decision from the very governments that built it, what does that tell us about the nature of international treaties?